Good evening. Tonight is Tuesday, January 8th. It's FinCom meeting here in the Westwood Public Library. We're calling the meeting to order. We're granting permission to Westcat. Does anyone else want to record the meeting? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have George Hertz participating tonight remotely by phone, so we have to do a roll call as part of due process. So with that, you just need to say here or present, right, Jane?
Yes.
Tom Kilgara?
Here.
Cindy Buckley?
Here.
Barb DeLisle?
Here.
Jim Farrow is not here. Lauren?
Here.
George? Present. Thanks, George. Ellen?
Here.
Peter Lentz?
Here.
Diane McCarthy?
Here.
Howard Messing?
Present.
Mike O'Hara?
Here.
Jen Perkins?
Here.
Jen? Chris Pareda?
Here.
And Mike Powers.
Here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And we're all set with that, Jane, right?
We're all set.
Roll call. So tonight, we are going to get two key updates. One from Mike, who will take us through the articles at a high-level description. Just so you know and don't panic, we'll be getting a lot more information in a couple weeks, and probably between now and then via email. The warrant just closed yesterday, but Mike was kind enough to give us kind of high-level lay of the land. He's going to go through that in 15 minutes. We'll hold our questions just so we can tighten up our agenda, ask questions, and then we'll move to Heath, who will go through the MSBA project update. Same format. We'll hold our questions if that's okay with you. Ask the questions at that point before Barb's long-range planning committee update. Then we have a few housekeeping items, and we'll be done. Okay? Great. With that, we'll turn it over to Mike, and he'll go through what we have in front of us, this high-level description of the articles.
Okay, so you all have a list of the articles that are going to be at the board approved last night for this year's town meeting warrant. The basic structure of the listing of the articles is we list the traditional articles, the articles that come up every year, mostly about the financial articles, starting off with balancing out the budget for the current year. So the first couple of articles always pertain to making adjustments in the budget. And then we get into the budgeting for next year, then various articles that come in, like road improvements and discontinuances and things like that. And then finally, we usually end up with the bylaw adjustments or mostly zoning adjustments that are being proposed for this year's annual town meeting. So let me start out by the supplemental articles. There are two supplemental articles that are being proposed. Basically, what we do is just before town meeting, and it usually goes right up closer to the end, at least the last hearing in March, we look at the current status of all the budgets, and we look where we have surpluses and where we project we'll have deficits, and we just shift money around. We usually like to have it keep within the department, so if a department has some salary issues or deficits, but they have some money left over in their expense account, that's where we like to start. And then if it goes beyond that, we like to keep it in the public safety or public works or general government. And then if it goes beyond that, we find other budgets that may have surpluses. And then the second article, the second supplemental article, is to use funds that are otherwise available and unappropriated to balance budgets, because we don't have any more surpluses that we're projecting. And usually that's free cash. The ambulance fund is another one that we use, and different funds that are held for appropriation. And then we get into the Generally, we also have a budget or an article for any late bills or previous year's fiscal bills that remain unpaid. We haven't had one of those in, I can't remember how many years, I mean, probably 20 to 25. So I don't even think we listed that this year. And then we get into the operating budget for fiscal year 20. It starts out with the main budget for the town. It includes all of our operations. And this is what we're working on right now. The school committee is meeting with the superintendent to discuss their operating budget, and the Board of Selectmen had their first view of it yesterday, and they raised some issues, and so there'll be another meeting in January, and I think it's February 2nd that will be published, and we'll send the entire budget to the Finance Commission. It's due February 1st, 2nd. Then, in addition to that, we have all of our appropriations for capital improvements. We start with the municipal capital improvements and the school department capital improvements. Usually those are about equal. Usually it's just under $1 million. The sewer capital budget is also included. That's different because the funding source is actually coming from the sewer department. They're an enterprise fund, so their operation is funded by the revenue that they receive each year. So the sewer rate is established based on what the total operating budget is, including capital. And then we get into other capital improvements. Other capital improvements are things that are in addition to what our standard practice is. So in the past, we didn't have much more than the $800 to $1 million to appropriate for capital. In recent years, we've accumulated some funds that we can go a little bit beyond. So there's some other capital that are funded, that we're proposing to be funded. And then this year, there's an additional appropriation for some specifically funded capital improvement that come from things like ambulance fees. Then the next couple of articles, the next two articles are related to stabilization reserves. There's a policy established for trying to keep the stabilization reserve, which is an account that is there for very serious times where we may, like the fiscal crisis that came up in 08 and 09, we had some shortfalls and needed to have additional funds. This is a fund that we would use. It requires a 2/3 vote to vote money in, and it requires a 2/3 vote to release money from that account. That we try to keep stable. We don't dip into that very often. Primarily, we don't because it's a good fund to have as a healthy balance to show the funding agencies when we go out for debt. It keeps our debt, our rating high. We're a AAA rated community, or at least we were the last time we went out. Then there's the appropriation for OPEB. OPEB, those of you that have been around, is the unfunded pension post-retirement or post-employee benefit fund. It basically is the health insurance that we provide for retired employees. In the past, we did not have a reserve account for this, or an account that we could draw on in future years as that obligation went up. We are now on a schedule to contribute the amount of money annually to keep that deficit amount up to where it should be, and have the investments, have that money invested so it'll grow. So we're in really good shape there. It took a few years to get to that amount, and I always like to repeat, the money that we are putting in that account resulted from savings that the employees currently employed agreed to by shifting our insurance. In effect, we were lowering or raising the cost of insurance for the current employees because of co-pays and deductibles. We went into more of those plans. We're now with the GIC program. And that resulted in a savings both for the employees and for the town. And the town share of that savings has been contributing toward the unfunded liability. So basically, I sold it to the employees on the basis that this is your insurance, and if you contribute, the town will be less likely to cut that amount when you're retired and having to cover your insurance. The next article is PEG funding. We established several years ago a public communication, it used to be known as WestCat. It is now known as Westwood Media Center. We, for many years, did not have good cable coverage of our meetings and sports activities and graduations and things like that that go on in the community. It was about 10 years ago, I believe, that we allocated more toward those funding and first established a town committee, and then it broke off as its own private committee. It's not affiliated with the town, except they get our funding through the two contracts that we have, one with Comcast and one with Verizon. So originally this article was proposed, it was proposed last year, and then we took it off, and it's proposed again this year because the state was requiring us to fund it differently. So what we've been doing is we take the money in, the Board of Selectmen then votes it out within 30 days out to the PEG access. There is a provision in the contract we have with Westwood Media Center, however, that basically says that if we're not happy with the product that you're producing, we can withhold the funds until we get to a point where we're comfortable with the service you're providing to the community. And a few years ago, we actually implemented that. We were very unsatisfied with where WestCat was at that time. They weren't covering the meetings the way they should be. They weren't covering the town events the way they should be. We just didn't feel they were going in a good direction. So we withheld the funding. They made some changes to both the makeup of their committee and their staffing. They came back to us. They promised that they would accomplish certain things. We reissued another contract with them, and they've lived up to every expectation we had. In fact, I would say they surpassed it. The board met with them yesterday at their meeting, and we're very pleased with what we've seen. The funding, therefore, was done that way. Well, the state has been contemplating changing the funding and requiring a town meeting, like a budget. And so we'd have to project what the revenue would be and then budget it and monitor it, rather than just turning it over to them. But they haven't made the change yet. So that was the original intent of this article, was to implement whatever the state came up with for the way we have to fund. There's another wrinkle that's come up just recently. Is the Federal Communication Commission is now contemplating allowing those cable companies to deduct from the amount of money they're contracted to give us, and this is every city and town in the United States, services that they provide to the community, the value of those services from the obligation, and in effect could probably even get down to owing the town zero in the way of cash. I'll give you an example. Comcast, in those early years, we weren't funding or very much toward the TV production. What we did this town is they had an internet link of all of its public buildings, and that we used that line to run our computer services between the buildings into a mainframe. continues to be provided by Comcast, and they service that, and they run it. If the federal government the process that they're setting up is going to be followed, they will then indicate to us that they're going to take some of the value from running that service for the community away from I think they're contracted to give us 3% of their revenue away from the PEG funding. And so this article could go either way this year. We're monitoring it. The next one is street acceptances. We don't have any street acceptances at the moment, but anytime a subdivision gets created, streets then get proposed once they've been fully constructed and they're up to town standard. And most or all of the buildings are built on the street. We'll accept that as a town public way, and that means that we're responsible for its upkeep after that point. And that's why we require them to meet a certain standard. Now, in some instances, the street has been unaccepted for many years, and it's deteriorated to a point where we'll accept it, but only if the residents along the street agree to fund half of its upgrade. So the town will front the money, do the repairs to the street, bring it up to the grade that we need it, and then we will bill each of the homeowners the other half through a betterment account. So they can pay it all at one time, or they can pay it over 20 years. They can reach agreement with us. It has to be paid in full if they're going to transfer ownership, however, once this starts. Next one is discontinuance of public ways. We currently have one instance. This is not always on the agenda. Probably once every 5 years we'll have a discontinuance of a public way. There is a particular instance here that you'll hear more about. I think we talked about it last year. There's a subdivision on Sanded Street that's being built out, and the roadway is veering to one side, and we're abandoning. We have already abandoned the roadway, the original roadway, and now we need town meeting vote to discontinue the public way. Road improvements, this is just Chapter 90 monies and other state funds that get provided. This article will simply allow us to spend funds for the maintenance and repair of our roadways. You're going to hear a lot about it because the next article is road improvement bonds. We're looking, as we have several times, in fact, when I first got here some 30 years ago, the town's roads were deplorable. I mean, we're talking Boston level of deplorable, potholes and stuff. We, back then, started to do road improvement bonds to bring all of our road systems up to a certain condition. And the analysis indicated that if you keep them in a certain condition, you avoid full depth reconstruction. And the savings from that is full depth reconstruction will cost you 5 times the cost of maintaining them annually. We've done a great job. I think the grading system was 100 grading system, and as I remember, we're over 80 on our grading for roads, and so we're up on top. But that only happens because we continue every 10, 15 years to have road improvement bonds to do specific major roads improvements that we couldn't otherwise fund in the budget, and that the state share that's provided under the Chapter 90 funding or grants that we may get is insufficient to get to these. And we, not always, but we generally will put that out as an override because it's beyond the normal. This is something that we should do. So this year you're going to hear a lot more about that. Todd has put together a road improvement bond to do sidewalks. There's the water district is doing a water main repair on High Street that's going to dig up the road, and we need to rebuild the road between, for more than what the district is doing. So the timing of this bond is critical because of its connection with the Dedham Westwood Water District water main work. Some sidewalk improvements that we're planning to make, and there's some supplemental. Chapter 90 monies covers about 70% of the maintenance work we should be doing on our road system. That means that 30% to keep it up to that grade 80 or above needs an additional 30 or 40% from the town to supplement that amount. And so there's a portion of this bond that will go to that. The next one is a charter amendment. The Board of Selectmen just last month decided to follow what many communities are embarking on, is to change the name of the Board of Selectmen, making it gender neutral. And so they've done what most communities are now doing, selected the name Select Board. The board members will be not known as selectmen, but as board members. The chairman will no longer be known as the chairman, but the chair. And so we're trying to follow what many communities are to make things gender neutral. That requires a charter amendment. We debated on exactly how to do it. The normal one process is to make the charter amendment at town meeting, and then subsequent year, a year later, go to the voters in an election and have them confirm what town meeting did. There's another procedure which would have a home rule petition then sent to the state legislature, who then would enact it. And once it's enacted, it will become officially something that we would have, that we would be allowed to do. We're thinking that we want to shorten the time rather than having the year process. So it's more likely you're going to hear more about this as a home rule petition to the state legislature. The next one is authorization for TIFs. We have been discussing with NED the possibility that there'll be a couple of office buildings going down on University Avenue. They've indicated that they might be interested in talking to us about a tax increment financing. That means that for a period of time, we will start them out at a lower than full tax rate, and usually that ratchets up over a time period of 5, 10, 15, no more than 20 years, I believe. We were designated an economic development area. That's not exactly the name, but that would qualify for these TIFs. We had provisions in the Westwood Station project to allow for TIFs financing. We also have it in the University Station project that this can be proposed. But things have changed since we got that approval from town meeting, so the belief is that we should go back and obtain town meeting approval authorizing the Board of Selectmen to enter into these agreements. And what it does is it gives an incentive for office development in Westwood rather than other communities. In office development, it's a competitive field, and oftentimes office development are looking for these incentives when they're making their location decision. And so we do have two that have now, just this past week, indicated to us they'd like to sit down and discuss the possibility of getting tax increment financing. So this article is being proposed for that purpose. The next one is to endorse the open space and recreation plan. The board is leaving this on as a placeholder. The open space and recreation plan has been worked on for the last year by a committee that was established to do so. We don't have to bring it to town meeting, but the last one we did, and the belief is that if it makes it stronger if the town meeting is made knowledgeable about it and votes to confirm it. The next one is participation in community electricity aggregation. The town itself is already buying energy from on an aggregation basis, but it's not available for our residents or our commercial users. This would allow the town to contract with an aggregator to come in and aggregate the electricity and provide it at somewhat lower rates to the residents. To me, the most compelling issue here is that it has a component which is green energy. So if you buy from this, I think the starting point is you would be buying 20% of your electricity from green energy producers, and you'd be buying 80% from non-renewable sources of energy. You can then ratchet it up, and you can go to 50%. You can go all the way to 100% if you want of green energy. What this does is it provides a guaranteed user for the electricity. So it provides a way of the producers of green energy to sell their electricity, knowing that they have a market, a guaranteed market, which incentivizes the development of green energy. Now, the green energy may be, in fact, a little bit more expensive than renewable energy. Getting this right, non-renewable energy, I believe. What you normally get. And that's important because if we're gonna get us onto green energy, there's going to have to be programs like this to move everybody on and provide the incentives for that development. The next one is a bylaw amendment to officially change and allow the moderator to make the decision to have all standing votes in front of town meeting be done with the clickers electronically that we had last year. We tried it last year. It worked wonderfully, in my opinion. It cuts down the time. It avoids all mistakes. It really is a much more effective way of getting the votes at town meeting. And most importantly, in my opinion, is it really does make town meeting truly a pure democracy. In my view, it always was touted as a pure democracy, but you see how everybody votes. In my view, to be a pure democracy, you need to have private votes. You need to be able to vote your conscience about an issue without having to worry about what your neighbors are thinking of you when you stand for a yay or a nay. And so that's what I thought we saw last year. That's what a lot of communities are moving to, and this bylaw will be that permanent change.
Mike, just in the interest of time, since the next three are kind of our redos,
Yep.
can we take those, circulate them offline for those of you that weren't part of FinCom when we voted? And I think for write-up purposes, we can probably, nothing's changed
Nothing's
in the
changed.
articles.
These are just to be re-voted. They all pass by 2/3.
The votes might change,
Correct,
so.
correct.
Yeah.
But for purpose of tonight, the high level. Can we just skip to the residential retirement community? That one's less clear than the other articles on what might be in that, the amendments to section 8.4 residential retirement community.
Yes, planning boards.
Is that with
Westwood Lodge?
the Westwood Lodge? Thanks.
Okay, so I got it here. So it's an amendment to 8.4, adding affordable unit requirement section to require affordable units for special permit projects, including how to calculate the required number of affordable units. This will match other sections of the bylaw, and the planning board will review the RRC. So it's not specifically for that development, but it's for any special permits that they grant for housing units. And the calculation method, this modification will match other places in the bylaw where they have to calculate think it's 15% of the.
The others seem straightforward with fence height and garage, so maybe we can push those through till we get more time
Yeah.
to review.
We get more from the-
Yeah, no, this is helpful. It's helpful directionally to see what they're related to. Do we have any questions for Mike? I do want to say that going forward, I think it's easier for our presenters if we send questions ahead of time. So we will continue to do that. So if you don't have questions now, but as we get more information, and Mike comes back the next time, then planning board, we do want to send them questions so we can be crisper through the meetings.
Just question on the High Street project. That seems pretty costly. What do you expect the town's cost to be with a project of that nature?
Somewhere in the vicinity of $5 million for that project. So not just for the High Street portion, I think the estimated number is somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million. And then the rest of it.
That's above and beyond the 70% state coverage? If I-
So what, when I was talking about the state coverage, what I was talking was they provide Chapter 90 funding for every city and town in the Commonwealth. The Chapter 90 money, when it comes to us, and so Todd has a plan for what maintenance needs, crack filling, doing an overlay, grinding, overlay, those types of projects.
So that's just normal year-to-year maintenance?
Normal maintenance that he does. What he estimates, and the engineers are working with him, investigated, is Chapter 90 money covers about 70% of what we should get, what we should be applying to the roads every year. So we're always, when we don't have supplemental funds, he's only doing 70% of the work he should be doing. And so this bond has an element in it that says, okay, for the next several years, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I believe, here's 30% more than the state's gonna give you, so you're gonna get 100% of your.
Okay, I understand. So the High Street project is something different?
High Street project is something different. Basically, that is, there's a water main in a section of High Street. And then there's a section beyond the water main. Now, the water district is going to pay for reconstruction where they're doing their work. But we're gonna extend that beyond, in either direction beyond, because that road should be all reconstructed at the same time.
And so you figure the cost is about $5 million?
No, the cost of that is about $2 million.
Okay.
So you'll get a breakdown in the future. I'm just giving you rough estimates as I remember them.
Right, thanks.
Go ahead, Barb.
The community electricity aggregation, is that just a pro forma vote to allow people to participate, or are there any risks or costs to the town?
So there are no risks to the town. Basically, what it is, we would contract with an aggregator. There are a few out there, a number of communities in the vicinity have been using this one, so I think there's one particular one we're looking at. That person would then do all the work that needs to be done, do the education process for the resident. I believe it's, every resident of Westwood would be signed up, so, for this, and then you would opt out. But it would be explained to you, and their bills and that sort of thing. The idea is, it's set up so you're not paying more money. In fact, the expectation is you will pay less for your, at the rates that we're talking about. But if you believe in green energy, and if you need to move to that for climate, to handle climate, you may be taking, if you took 100%, your bills might go up because the rate would be higher, but you'd be contributing toward.
So it's really a service you're providing, there are no real costs to the town?
There's no cost. We don't have to pay for this, the aggregator just would work. And they'll be running some education programs. And the whole process of going through this will educate the public.
Okay. Jill?
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, one last question.
You
Then move on.
had said that there was some section in here that usually you do an override for.
That's the going to.
And are you expecting to do that this coming year?
That's currently the thing.
And is that the only thing that would be included at the moment?
It hasn't been officially decided, but we're contemplating whether or not that should remain within Proposition 2 and that will go out. And it's a good sum of money, and I think there's a belief that, it's projects like this that should go out. They've gone out in the past.
Is that the only thing that looks like it would be in a potential override?
Yeah.
That you know now?
Yeah, and if I've been corrected, it's not an override, let's use a different term, it's a debt exemption.
Okay.
Okay, so it does add to the taxes, but on a temporary basis. The term of the bond is the term. It's only the amount to service the bond.
Okay. Debt exemption, I
Debt
don't remember
exemption.
that.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Okay.
That's how to get us started. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming, short notice. With that, we'll move to Mr. Petracca, who's here to represent the school and give us an update on the MSBA project. Thank you for coming.
Superintendent wanted me,
You okay?
yeah. Superintendent wanted me to let you know that she's sorry she couldn't make it tonight. She had a previous engagement. She's actually at the high school tonight, participating in a parent program, talking about race with our children.
Yeah.
Here we're talking about the MSBA, sorry.
I wanted to be there too.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
It is in Westwood Media.
Okay, so first I thought we'd do a little quick review of the overall process. I don't know if you've seen this chart before. This is directly from the MSBA website. It's really comprehensive. It breaks the whole process into 3 areas: preparations, scope definition, and scope monitoring. We're right now in the preparation phase, which is also called the eligibility period. From that, we'll move into the feasibility, scope definition. And that's really, this next phase is really where we define what the project is. Once that's defined, then we move into the scope monitoring, which is the final detailed design drawings, as well as the construction itself and the closeout of the project. As I said, we're in the eligibility phase, as you know, which for us will be ending on February 26th next month. We're right on schedule for that. And then we move into the feasibility. We get voted by the MSBA into the feasibility phase. So that starts as of March 2019 and runs until fall of 2020, when we're anticipating a funding vote. The first thing we need to do is, in the feasibility phase, and that will happen in the first 4 to 6 months, is form a project team, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. The final phase is detailed design and construction. In this phase, this is where you finish the design, you build the building, and complete the project. We're anticipating that the project, if everything goes fine, which it will, we'll be moving into a new building in the summer of 2023. So that's where, at this point, we're anticipating that to fall. So again, we're in the eligibility periods. We had a lot of tasks and deliverables. Last time we updated you. If you can notice that we crossed out the November 28th date for that was a mistake by the MSBA. They just wanted us to meet with them by the end of November and not actually have certification signed by that point. The actual certification isn't due until the end of February. So that's currently in progress, and we're close to signing that. Since we were here last, we submitted what's called a maintenance and capital plan to the MSBA, which was quite comprehensive, and I'll take you through what we submitted for that plan. I should note here too, that's the plan where we could actually gain an additional 2%. So depending on how they receive what we do with our buildings, we can get an additional 2%. The average, they told me, is about 1.4% for community, an additional percentage for reimbursement. After the enrollment certification is complete, then the final step is actually signing the feasibility study agreement. That happens after we get voted in. So the MSBA board meeting is next month. After we vote this in, and we sign the agreement for feasibility, we'll be officially moved into the feasibility phase of the project. Maintenance capital planning information. Again, this is basically a comprehensive look at how we maintain and fund our buildings. So we had to submit information on staffing, maintenance planning, facility, something called facility condition index, which I'll talk about. environmental issues within the buildings, our maintenance budget, capital program, as well as our capital budget. So for staffing, we had to submit detailed job descriptions, numbers of custodians, maintenance and ground staffing, trainings that we do provide for our staff, as well as a whole host of other questions that they had. For the maintenance planning, we submitted our maintenance plan, of course, that includes standards and benchmarks for maintenance, but it also included information on our online work system, and our preventative maintenance that we do throughout the district. I'm going to skip facility mentioning that for a second. Under environment, we had to submit air quality reports, protocols for eliminating toxic chemicals, and the use of green products within our buildings, which of course we do. Under this category, we also submitted information on energy efficiency measures that we've undertaken throughout the district. With the maintenance budget, we submitted the last 4 years of our maintenance budgets to the MSBA. One of the first questions, though, and I pulled it out for this section, they asked, does the person in charge of facilities maintenance have a role in establishing the maintenance budget? Now, I have a maintenance background. I used to be the director of operations for the district for about 9 years. That just made me sad because, to me, of course, that person should have a role in there. So this question tells me that there are systems out there that don't value that position. So that's just my comment. Under the capital program, we had to submit a 5-year capital plan, as well as answer questions about who's involved with the development of the long-term plan, as well as the annual capital plan. With the capital budget, we had to submit the last, actually, all the way back to 2005 for what we were funding. So they really want to know the ins and outs of what we do with our buildings, how we maintain them, how we fund them. We also submitted separately a supplemental document, which was a 3-ring binder, 3-inch 3-ring binder of all sort of the artifacts. So yes, we actually do what we say we're doing. So we have job description for everything, financial information. So the facilities condition index, this is something that I pulled out of here because I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of it, but it's a really useful tool for looking at capital and sort of our future capital. It's a process that we use to track our building equipment, our specific building components. And we track things like useful life, age, condition, and even replacement costs. I've included some examples in the packet, like boiler information, for instance, and the second one is circulating pumps. So here you can see that we have location, make, model, year, all of that. And again, this is just a great tool for us to see what's coming up, see what we should take a look at, maybe revisit if we need to replace it. If it's still working fine, then we have to replace it, but have it on our radar for the next capital process, budget process. So what's next with the MSBA? There are 3 things that we need to get done fairly soon, and we will. We need to finalize and agree on the design enrollment. We need to execute the certification by the 26th. And after we get voted, then we need to sign the feasibility study agreement. After that point, we get into the feasibility study, and there's really no reason, I had a conversation with Ms. Briggs, there's really no reason why we wouldn't be getting complete all these things that we basically have. So once we sign the enrollment, we're basically complete with this phase. So there's really no reason why we would move into the next phase. But the first thing we need to do in the next phase is hire OPM, which, as you know, is a project manager. The school building committee does that. And we also need to select a designer, and that is a MSBA-led process in collaboration with the district. But it's a big number, and that's, they really get involved with that because it's a key component of this whole process. Those 2 things will take about 4 to 6 months to complete. So as I said, in another timeline, that takes us to around June or July of this year. So that's it for the MSBA update. That's where we are. We're in great shape. I was also asked to do a quick update on the FY20 budget. I can't say too much more because the superintendent is going to be presenting that budget next week at the school committee meeting on the 15th. But what I can say is that we work very closely with town officials through our budget steering committee. We actually have a meeting tomorrow morning as well. And, you know, they've been great to work with. We're on the same page. We realize that, you know, we're going to be asking the voters in a very short time to help support the building project. So, you know, we're looking at a budget that, you know, does move the district forward, but is also sustainable as well as responsible. Because we know that vote's coming up. So this year, for the budget season, we're really expecting no surprises. I do have to say too, I've been here 19 years, and I've seen the progression, and we're really at a great point with the way, you know, towns and schools are working together and really collaborating on this stuff. And, you know, we've been great as a board supporting the schools as well, so.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Howard?
Just, you said that a vote of the town will be coming up at some point to support the project. w- Yeah. What's being done to convince the town we need to do anything?
Well, that's going to be happening in the next phase, feasibility phase. That's when we go out to the town and, we have meetings, we get really community involved. That's what that whole phase is, to define the project. Because what the MSBA doesn't want, and what we don't want, is to multiply the town's not to go for. So that whole purpose of that phase is to get everybody on board and say, okay, what can move forward? Because if it can't move forward, then it won't, and everybody will waste their time.
I agree, I think you need to plan that just as much as you need to plan everything else.
Well, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's where the OPM comes in, and that's where, you know, the school building committee, they really, they pull all this together, as well as design. These people have gone through these projects before, so they know sort of the layout of the lay of the land.
There are communications for those of us who are getting the emails from the superintendent and others. We have received some.
Yeah, we're still
About
putting out
updates and stuff.
We're
Yeah.
putting out updates,
Yeah.
But that's going to be more intensive. We're
Correct.
going through this
Yeah.
phase.
Peter?
Yes, in light of the fact that you're going through the MSBA project, how does that, if any way, affect your capital decisions or recommendations? Are you avoiding really big expenditures and doing smaller things?
Well,
or-
we take a look at what the project would be. You know, obviously, it's a safety thing. We're maintaining the buildings and stuff in the school committee last month. You know, as long as our students in these buildings, they're going to be safe. So, you know, I have no problem putting money into that. As far as, you know, major renovations, of course, we're not doing any major renovations. One example of that would be like at the Hammond. I don't know if you know the Hammond cafeteria, but it has this giant door. So last year, you know, it was recommended that we, you know, replace the door. So let's see if we can fix it. And so it turned out, yeah, we can put, you know, hinges on it and fix the door and maintain it safely. So that's kind of what we're doing to maintain the buildings as is without any sort of major capital investment in the building. Because we realize, I mean, it may be torn down, so.
Okay. As a follow-up, would there be, let's just say the school did not get approved, is there a bow wave of capital waiting that would say, oh God, we didn't get the new school, we have to spend more capital than normal?
More capital than normal? No, I mean, any capital that is pending and has been pending, like the Hammond roof is pending. You know, so that, you know, is structurally sound, but it needs to be replaced. So, you know, and we've been putting, to the point, I mean, with our capital funding, every year we put some money aside for roofing. So, you know, we have a sum of money that we can go ahead and do it. And continue to maintain roofs.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Jen.
This process, a lot of people start at the beginning and only some people get their projects built. What, do you know where we are in that funnel as far as how likely we are to kind of continue to keep going along? I mean, are there a certain number of projects that they're gonna build and not others, or is it a floating?
No, and like, once you're in this pipeline, the only thing that really gets in the way is if your community doesn't vote for it. It's really not the funding, because they have their funding schedule, they'll let as many people in as, you know, they foresee spending us the cash flow, which of course with them.
So
yeah,
people don't
we-
generally fall out of the process. Got it.
Not unless the community, like if we didn't get that vote last year, which we actually didn't have to get until this February, we would be signaling to the MSBA that this community didn't want a project. And so that's really the only way, once you get entered into the core program, that you can be excluded.
Got it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Kind of further to Peter's comment, if for any reason we did not get this approved and go forward, we would have some major capital requirements for the schools because we would be planning on doing renovations at some point because
Sure, well, that'd be a
those,
decision. Right,
so there is built-up capital there are built-up capital requirements to kind of bring the schools into the 21st century, what maybe with our own dime, but and maybe not improving the educational purpose of the buildings, but, just to, I mean, what was the number of just status quo of what to have to do? Millions.
More piecemeal, like
Yeah.
if you want to change all the windows at that sheet,
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, the 7 buildings is always projects.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Tom.
Heath, so just to summarize too, the funds that were approved last year at town meeting, it was the up to 1.75 mil, and that was to get through the feasibility study, right? Everything from the design, planning, project manager, et cetera. And if for some reason the town voted against the project at next town meeting, then that would be all for naught, right?
That'll be all for naught. Well, you will have spent your money because you will have hired an OPM, you will have hired a designer, so at the point that is done, yeah, you will have spent that money.
Right.
And so any excess of that would be still available, but yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we, that 1.75, again, that was
Up to.
up to, yeah,
Right.
so I'm not anticipating it's going to cost that much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. That was a great update. And we understand you're leaving the town, so best wishes to you, and thank you so much for your years of service. I didn't realize it was 19 years.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. You'll be missed.
Oh, appreciate it, thank you.
Best of luck to you.
Thanks. Heath.
Going ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
If I still-
No, go right ahead.
No, you have to leave.
You don't have to stay for our housekeeping stuff.
Okay, so now we'll move on to, we're on schedule. I'm ahead of schedule, thank you. 6 minutes. So Barb, and maybe Mike, I think Barb did the write-up, agreed to give us an update on where things are. They're liaisons for us to the long-range financial planning committee. So Barb, with that, I'll turn over to you. It can be Mike, whomever, just.
If you're not aware, it's a committee that's been around, and I don't know, maybe 15 years or more. And I served on it when I was on school committee, and then was an at-large member, and now I'm a member for FinCom. But the principal purpose of the committee is to act as an advisory role to the select board regarding long-term capital applications and financial policy guidance. So, for instance, we've provided advice on on the financial policies that the town has. Pam has reviewed them before, like the amount we should try to aim for in stabilization, and we review those on an ongoing basis. Part of the reason for this is when NSTAR built their headquarters, there was that income coming in, and people claimed that money. The schools claimed the money. Everybody claimed it, and it was like, what do we do with new money coming in and all these different competing resources? So we're kind of getting everybody together not just focused on budget steering, but kind of on a long-term basis, on an ongoing throughout the year basis. So it's school administration, school committee, assessors, treasurer, tax collector, FinCom, selectmen, planning board, FinCom, at-large members, and the financial team. So Pam, Mike, various people are on this committee. It has, the last couple of years, it had gone a little bit quiet, but it's kind of come up again as we've been reviewing things, providing more advice to the selectmen. We don't take any votes, so it's really more the conversation that occurs in the room with all the different perspectives of trying to get, not even a consensus, but just give some advice and give some feedback. So an example, we tend to look at capital requests each year. And an example is the recreation department came and they had a couple things they wanted to talk about. One was the abandoned Sheehan tennis courts. They've kind of worked on this whole proposal to be putting in pickleball courts. Well, at that meeting, we were discussing it, and the schools were kind of like, well, actually, you know, we really there might be potentially the MSBA project will include Sheehan, and we might need that as a staging area for construction. Well, it doesn't make sense to go do anything, so she got basically, not the orders, but she realized that she's gonna have to put that on hold and not discuss it for another year. And, you know, there aren't really a lot of venues for all those different parties to be talking on an ongoing basis. So it is pretty useful. The other thing that we talked about, we've had a couple meetings the last 2 months. So another thing we talked about is the replication of the tennis court back at Morrison, related to when they put in the fire station. And, you know, we looked at different proposals, and they had come up with some proposals, and one was very expensive, and it was going to impact the Morrison field a little bit and some of their extra, their batting cage and all. It was going to affect the basketball court and the DPW garage. And, you know, the advice was, you know, number one, let's not go for the expensive route. We could go for something that's less expensive, but really it's a political decision that the selectmen have to make. You know, we can't really make it flat based on costs, and they've just got to kind of look at that and make the decision on what they want to do. But we kind of looked at that and said, you know, it doesn't make sense to be spending a lot of money on this from a financial standpoint, but it's really not our position to say that. It's, you know, based on, you know, they have to take the hard line and have to kind of make the decision themselves. We talked about the DPW work. I know you'd asked about the crosswalk safety improvements. They've done a study. There are 200 and some odd crosswalks in town. So they've done a study. The study is not complete. I asked Todd if they would release the study, and he said he didn't feel comfortable releasing it until it goes to the selectmen. The selectmen haven't seen it yet, and it's not clear when it's going to be released, if at all it is going to be finalized and released. He said they're working on the recommendations on a piece-by-piece basis, but you know, there's nothing, you know, major. It's going to be more signage and things like that that'll be coming from it, but they are addressing that and looking at the location of the crosswalks, et cetera. But it's going to be somewhat included in their road
That's right.
number.
In that article?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because my observation is that the signage doesn't do anything. And the lights don't work, and down by Mill Street and stuff.
You know, we
It's
were talking about this.
practically
What it
useless.
comes down to is it's driver education. I mean, quite frankly. I mean, it's either that or you put a sign in the middle of every crosswalk. All I could think of was like I was going in front of Wegmans today, and, you know, all the little stop signs they have in the middle of every crosswalk in front of Wegmans. I mean, it's very difficult. He said
I've seen other tactics taken that are pretty
Yeah.
successful, including police kind of reinforcement of,
Enforcement is
Crosswalk.
a healthy.
And that's not a
reinforcement.
DPW issue, that's
Right,
a,
but I'm just
that's
saying
a
in
police,
general,
and
yeah.
we talked a little bit about police enforcement of speeding and stoppage at stop signs, et cetera. That was we don't have, at our meetings, we don't have individual, like normally, the recreation department or the police or the fire aren't there unless they're coming to talk about it, but that's not the purview of this is long-range financial planning, so. We did talk a little bit about the security report that's doing, and I guess their report is not gonna be ready for the, well, it certainly wasn't ready for last night for their closing the articles, so they've got a placeholder. But I don't think I don't know if you were at that particular meeting, I know you were one of them, Mike, whether they talked about that. I think they're looking at putting a placeholder for some of the security work that needs to be done, but the reports aren't gonna be ready for town meeting, so.
School security, right?
Well, it was
Total.
school and it was overall, the whole.
Supposed to be done by
All
the end of
town-owned.
December.
Yeah, it's not.
are schools done though? That might be done.
No, it wasn't
No?
it wasn't done.
And they haven't started meetings.
I have, let's see, I think I have something about that.
You know, can I just
Yeah.
ask a clarifying question, Bob? These topics that you're discussing, you solicit from the town department heads, or how does this come about?
No, so it's run by the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and it's just like, so for instance, the next one I'm gonna say is the hotels and meals tax. No, it's just everybody using their own knowledge from their boards comes together and talks about it. So it's just another, venue for giving advice on how to look at things. No, we're not pretending to be like representative of the whole town.
No, but I think that there's some key ones that are missing, and that's why I'm confused. And the security one, they brought before us, they hired consultants, paid them a certain amount of money to go do a study. The expectation is that there would be some action on these studies.
We don't set the agenda, the select board sets the agenda, and it's not an all-inclusive, we're gonna discuss every single thing that's come through FinCom, a warrant article or anything. It's, they don't feel they need the advice on that. So we're not looking at, I can, at our next meeting, talk about that a bit, but we're not going through and checking up on every.
So the purpose isn't, so I'm confused. So the purpose is not the town sharing with you folks to provide us information about potential big-ticket items coming down the road?
No, it's advisory to the selectmen. It was created by the selectmen, and it's advisory to the
So
selectmen.
they dictate, pretty much, yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so,
just to comment on that, so there's a difference between our long-range planning subcommittee and this long-range planning committee, financial planning committee.
on this,
This is really, think of it as like a multidisciplinary advisory board, I'll say, that the selectmen have pulled together, where they can come in and say, we've got these 5 or 6 things on our mind. We want to bounce them around a little bit, get your thinking, the perspective of the planning board, of the school department, the school committee, of the tax folks, Barb and I, and and a couple others, and they'll throw these things around, and there's no formal process. What they don't do, for example, which we do in our committee, is they don't sit there and say, let's look at all of our cash accounts. Let's look at our free cash, our stabilization, our capital stabilization planning, and big things coming down the pike, and let's figure out all these puzzle pieces fit together. It's not really a budget planning group or a budget steering group in that regard. So in our little subcommittee needs to go to those things to liaise with them. We're almost giving them, I think Barb's right, we're giving them feedback of quasi-informed people. And to some extent, we pick up ideas and can bring them back like Barb's doing today. But what we have to do it, when the education and municipal committees give their report, we give our report. You remember that tediously boring thing that I presented. It's like a snapshot of all the financial accounts.
because
and
we're
then-
looking at you're looking at the debt and all that.
Yeah, all together, including these big, like I always say, scary budgetary items that we won't have enough money for. And then the question always is, what do we prioritize?
Right. Right.
Or what does the town prioritize?
Yeah, and I think that's a distinction I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
And it's really two different efforts.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is really the liaison to that.
Okay.
So we're, Mike's more the guru of the big picture, and the only thing, Pam usually provides us with the update of where we are in our financial targets, and, the one item we're never quite at, which is, I think, is.
It's capital
Capital,
spending, yeah.
which has gotten a lot better. But, so then we talked about the hotels meals tax, because that money is just coming in, and it's been building up. The selectmen haven't decided how it's gonna be apportioned, and that's an issue like the N-Star, everybody wants to spend the money, and they haven't decided how they're spending the money. And our advice a couple years ago was, let's start seeing it coming in and about how much it is. And one of our concerns is that is a pocket of money that is, not gonna be, that's gonna go up and down with the economy too. So it's built up about $800,000, it's sitting there. And then the question is, what do we do with that? Because it can go up and down, you don't want it to go into the operating account. So I think the general consensus is that a certain percentage, and I'm gonna say 20 to 30%, kind of go into the capital stabilization fund on a regular basis. That has to be voted in by town meeting, and it is voted out then to spend it too. And then we could use it for other types of capital that comes up each year. We haven't quite decided what's happening with that. We're still kind of looking at it. But I think the one consensus was that it probably should be used for capital and one-time things that occur. Then the last one we really talked about was the Community Preservation Act. I don't know if you've heard some things within town, but that there was a little bit of a push for the selectmen to put that on the warrant. We had a lot of discussion about that. The CPA was put forward to the voters about, 10 years ago or so, and when it was put forward, the proposal was to go for the full 3%, and it was voted down. So people felt it was kind of time again, and we had a 2-meeting discussion on this. And basically, the consensus was that this is not the year to do it, that we're really trying to keep our powder dry for the school project, and as it is, we'll probably have the road exclusion. And that things are very uncertain with tax bills right now. I mean, people haven't actually had to do their taxes yet for last year, so, I think George has mentioned that on an ongoing basis about, we haven't seen the impact. So to ask people to vote for even 1% increase on their taxes is kind of tough right now. So we need that to settle in. And plus, there's a lot of uncertainty about the state because more towns have been coming in. I want to say Cambridge and Boston have voted it in now. So there's been less available for matching from the state. But the state is now talking about beefing it up, but it's very uncertain on that too. So the consensus was, in general, that our recommendation was that this was not the year, to not dismiss it completely, but this was not the year to be looking at it. And I think that as a result of that, they've kind of decided to not put it forward. So those are the types of things that we talk about. And if anybody wants, if the selectmen want to talk about something further, I'm sure we probably will talk about security at some point, but, from a long-term standpoint. We talked a little bit about some of the projects that are, looking forward. A lot of it is managing when the projects come in, and, when we started this committee umpteen years ago, we went and we did a whole review and a visit to the entire physical plant. And I remember going into the fire station in Islington, and it's like Chief Scoble's like, we would shut this down if it were a private company. And it took like 15 years for it to get done, but at least it's, a lot of progress has been made. So there are a few things that are coming up. There's going to be some work that have to be done at Town Hall and Fire Station number 1, so, but, nothing right now. So that's kind of it.
And it'd be great if you can just continue to bring them, if topics
Yeah.
come up, much like school, municipal, and stuff as liaison. Any questions for Barb or Mike? No? Okay, great. Round of the end of the agenda. So before we leave, we have two kind of housekeeping. On the articles, it makes sense, or it's worked well in the past, when we've assigned them before we get full explanation. So if you're responsible for writing up the article, you know it sooner rather than later. I thought for purposes tonight, we just assign them to the subcommittees, and as we get more information about the articles, we'll get from you, Jane, right, before our next meeting, maybe amongst the subcommittees, you can figure out who's interested in what article, and we'll assign at a person level then, just because I think it helps to chunk some of these out ahead of time, according to topics that kind of fit with what we're following. Jane let me know that the first 8, 10, up to ambulance fees are ones that she's traditionally done with the chair, so we'll take those all the way up to the appropriation of the ambulance fees. Is that right, Jane?
That's right.
Stabilization
We'll take that too.
Fund 2 we'll take. Okay, so then it's at OPEB.
Yes.
OPEB, Peter, I think we put in the municipal, the scope of your subcommittee.
Okay.
Since Rob Uwick left, we didn't kind of leave it on its own. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Because I think it will come up through your work. PEG access cable funding. Barbara, Mike, can we do that as part of kind of long range?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or catch-all other bucket?
Yeah.
Street acceptances, I think, go with Mike, Chris, Lauren, and George, because it fits kind of with the planning board, community economic development subcommittee. Probably the same of the public way road improvement projects, I'd say too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, makes sense.
So street acceptance, discontinuance of public way,
Yeah,
road improvements, those 4 are going to go to what subcommittee?
the community and economic
Oh,
development.
okay.
Well, we can change it, but
No, that's good.
I think since the school and Muni's gonna be so busy with their meetings
That's
and
great.
stuff, the more we can kind of spread it out.
Yep, these 4.
Change Board of Selectmen, maybe we can do that, Tom, or me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's all.
I'm going to put you, Tom.
Duh.
Yeah, yeah.
Tom, are you-
Oh, I think Howard
take
just
that one.
volunteered.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Oh, you want to?
I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, Howard just wrote it for me.
University tax increment, is that a Barbara, Mike?
Yeah,
Or George.
yeah.
George.
Is George still on? No.
He is.
Is he awake?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
I think
volunteer
I-
George
I think I
for it.
wrote that
We can
8
see
years
if he's
ago,
in.
but
Yeah.
George is more of an expert than
Okay.
anybody, but it's up to him if he has 10
I
other
think I might
ones.
have done the last one. The
Right.
last.
Okay,
Why was George?
that's okay,
One
we'll
of
just
us.
note it. We
I'm
don't have-
gonna-
We're just trying to get a lay of the land.
George won't. George
I'm
will
just
be
trying to
on.
understand how much
Okay.
work, so we can try to distribute, knowing that Muni and
Yeah.
school will get busy. Endorsement of the open space and recreation plan, that probably fits with the community and economic development group.
Were you interested in that group?
A municipal.
Okay.
Municipal, yeah. Electricity aggregation, that was the buying green energy.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Who's doing that?
I'm happy to help on that.
Barb and
Chris
Chris.
will help you.
Barb
So we
and
can-
Chris,
if
good.
we- If it doesn't make sense as we get more detail, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Electronic voting.
I can take that one.
Ellen will take.
Oh.
Did a little research on that a couple.
Oh, great, Ellen.
Expert.
Let's
She's
just
our
wait on
petitioner.
these 3. We do have the write-ups, things could change to your point, Howard, with votes and whatnot, but if we have a good working draft of the 3 of them and we don't expect significant changes, I don't want to lose sleep over it.
Okay.
Fence heights, residential garage kind of
Solid.
fits with,
Jim, right?
yeah, I think the rest do.
Jim, yeah, that's all planning board.
And then we'll see what okay.
Okay, those 4.
That's great. So we have a sense of where the articles will land, and then we can refine as we learn more. And if they're dense articles, we've been known to kind of 2 or 3 of us tackle them, so no one's trying to go it alone. I think we said before, Jane has good examples. Some of us have examples of one Mike wrote 8 years ago, whatever, so we'll provide all the resources we can on
I
that.
have all that too.
Okay. In the book.
I forgot to ask,
ahead.
did we get any petition articles?
No,
You didn't,
Good question.
we do not.
Excellent.
and it's too late.
No, it's too late, yep, for anything other than, we have some placeholders that we can, the miscellaneous, that the
Right.
Board of Selectmen can use.
Right, that's right. So our last item for today is to vote on the minutes that were redone from, Jane emailed out this
George?
morning. Did everyone get those?
Okay,
There were
good, we're gonna
changes
vote on the
made
articles.
on the
and
field.
minutes.
So because we're doing it in a roll call fashion again, so vote yea or nay in favor of the minutes. Sound good?
Yeah,
From me, good.
yes, you go first.
I'd say yay. Tom Kilgariff,
Yay.
Cindy Buckley,
Yay.
Barb Delisle.
Yay.
Jim's not here. Lauren?
Yay.
George Hertz?
Yes.
Thank you, George. Ellen?
Yay.
Peter? Linz?
Yay.
Diane?
Yay.
Thank you. Howard?
Abstain?
Abstaining.
Wasn't at the meeting.
Mike?
Yay.
Jen Perkins?
Abstain.
Okay. Chris?
Abstain?
Mike Powers?
Abstain.
Okay. That covers that, right, Jim?
Yes, it does.
So with that, any other questions or items we have to cover? We'll provide more information offline. We'll have a meeting. We have 2 nights scheduled, the 23rd, 24th. Is that
It's
it?
on the agenda.
22nd, 23rd?
Yep.
Traditionally, we try to do it in one night. And I am going to try to, I think, 2 things. One, if we can send questions about the articles ahead of time, get the presenters crisp on what we have questions about, want to know. Try to manage people through that, as I did tonight, so we're not here till midnight. That being said, I don't want to shortchange any conversation, so it's that delicate balance.
Could Jane get the status on the security report?
I
Yeah.
wrote that down to do that, yes, I will get that for you. And Abby, now that the warrant has closed and they're having their planning board meeting tonight, Abby is gonna get us a synopsis of all these articles. So I'll get that to you as soon as possible. I wrote that down to follow up on that, yes.
Will the 22nd be here or someplace else?
Well, we need to do a better job with remote. So I know we have a member who wants to do remote on the 22nd. So they're very short and sweet. When they rewired the phone system, every hard line has to be in a certain plug. They were here all afternoon trying to fix it. So if we can't do, this isn't working well for George or for us. And so I may have to move it if we can't. I don't like to do that because residents associate us with here. It's the best space for, and a lot of times people do come for this first round, so I'm hoping we can get a fix in place, but we may,
What, the little theater at the high school?
that's small. I think Carby Street is bigger, so we'd probably do that,
What
but
about the meeting room that the selectmen use at the town, at the police station?
it doesn't have any speaker access at all. So I think Carby would be our best bet. I know.
7 or 7:30? 7. right?
7:30, it's not a public hearing. The first,
Okay, the
yeah,
public
this is the
hearing's
first
at
round
7.
of, yep, so, unless, you know, you can change it to whatever you
I
want.
think it's been, we can talk about it offline, but I think 7 was that much harder for some people commute-wise. So, but I think if we do some prep offline, start on time and try to move through diligently, we can not be here till midnight.
Traditionally, this meeting is just warrant article sponsors,
Right.
so we
And
won't
then-
hear, yeah, we won't hear from, we'll hear high level maybe from Pam, depending on where they're at, because she and Emily will come before us in February. So it'll just
Right.
basically be the meat of the articles, other than the financial ones.
And then we vote March 4th. 5th.
Yes.
Watch it
Right.
live and then just
No, March
Yeah.
25th.
Yeah.
text her if you have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone not?
We need to second it.
Oh, second, they did.
They did.
Did
Yeah.
we get a second? Okay.
Julie, nice job with the times.